My fiancée made fun of my mother's cooking at our engagement dinner, so I returned the ring and left her crying between two families at war. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've always been fiercely protective of my mom. She's the kind of woman who pours her heart into every dish, who wakes up at 5 a.m. to make sure her family eats like kings, and honestly, I've never met anyone who loves like she does. That's why what happened at our engagement dinner still haunts me. I had been looking forward to that night for months, imagining everyone laughing, sharing stories, and celebrating what was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life. But the moment my fiancé walked in, carrying that smug little smile, I felt the air shift. My fiancée, Claire, has always had this aura of confidence that borders on arrogance. She's stylish, sharp, funny in a biting way, and, at least in my eyes, charming. But there's this undercurrent to her, a need to prove herself, to dominate every room she enters. I had hoped my family would warm up to her. I really did. But something about the way she looked around the room, the way she scanned the table, made me uneasy. She barely smiled at my mom, the woman who had raised me, who had spent hours preparing every dish, arranging every detail of the dinner, making it perfect. As I helped my mom carry the last plate to the table, I noticed Claire's eyes flicking over the spread, her lips curling into that tiny, unreadable smirk. I tried to ignore it, forcing a smile, thinking maybe I was overreacting. I told myself, it's just nerves. She'll warm up. But that little voice in the back of my mind wouldn't quiet down. Something told me this night was about to take a turn I could never have imagined. The dining room smelled of cumin, garlic, and freshly baked bread, the kind of aroma that should have made everyone feel comforted, homey, safe. Instead, I could feel tension prickling at the edges of the room, subtle, almost invisible, but it was there, building like static before a storm. My stomach churned, my palms felt clammy, and I knew deep down that Claire's next words could change everything. And then she spoke. The table was set perfectly. My mom had outdone herself, as always. Every dish gleamed under the chandelier light, colors vibrant, aromas mingling in the air, spiced rice, tender meat simmered in rich gravy, fresh bread still warm from the oven. Relatives were chatting, laughter floating across the room, and for a moment I allowed myself to breathe. I thought, maybe tonight wouldn't be so bad. Then Claire leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing slightly as she picked up her fork. I watched her glance around the table, scanning the dishes like a critic in some upscale restaurant rather than someone about to marry me. "So, this is supposed to be good?" she said, her tone light, but the edge in her voice made my stomach twist. The words weren't loud, but they landed like a slap. My mom froze mid-motion, a serving spoon hovering in the air. A quiet hush fell for a moment. Everyone noticed, even if no one spoke. I tried to laugh it off. "It's my mom's special recipe. You'll see, it's amazing." But my voice sounded hollow even to me. Claire smirked, lifting a piece of bread and nibbling it slowly. Interesting texture," she said, and I could see my mom's shoulders slump just a fraction. That tiny motion, the way her pride cracked, stabbed me in the chest. I wanted to tell Claire to stop, to defend my mom, but the room felt heavy. Everyone was watching now, waiting for how I'd respond. The relatives whispered quietly, some exchanging glances, sensing the shift in energy. My dad cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to steer conversation elsewhere. But I couldn't take my eyes off Claire. There was a thrill in her voice, a subtle enjoyment in shaking up the evening. I felt anger rising, but I swallowed it, telling myself to be calm. Yet the pit in my stomach deepened, and a faint sense of dread washed over me. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, of love, of family coming together. But every bite she took, every smirk she cast my mom's way, was slowly poisoning the room. And I realized with a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Then, as she placed her fork down with that same smug little smile, she whispered something to my cousin, and my heart sank even further. I still remember the exact moment it happened. Claire picked up a spoonful of my mom's signature stew, swirled it around like she was inspecting a chemistry experiment, and said, almost casually, "You know, It's interesting. I guess I expected something. More refined? Her words weren't loud, but every syllable dripped with condescension. The room froze for a heartbeat. My mom's hand trembled slightly as she set the serving spoon down, eyes flicking nervously between me and Claire. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to explode, to defend my mom, to tell Claire she had no right to speak like that in our home, in front of everyone who loves her. But I forced a laugh, the kind of nervous laugh that doesn't reach your eyes. It's traditional, Claire. It's my mom's recipe, I said, trying to keep my tone even. She just tilted her head, smirk widening. Traditional. Sure, she said lightly, like she'd scored some kind of invisible point. I could see it in my mom's face. The hurt, the shame, the disbelief. She had worked all day, preparing this meal with love, expecting smiles and gratitude, not mockery. The smell of garlic and spices that usually felt comforting now made my stomach twist in knots. I wanted to shrink into the chair, disappear, and somehow erase the moment entirely. My relatives shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. No one spoke, but the tension was suffocating. I tried again, more firmly this time. Claire, please, don't speak like that about my mom's cooking. She just laughed softly, that tiny laugh that makes your blood boil. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, she said, leaning back, sipping her drink. My jaw tightened. The room felt smaller, hotter, heavier. I could see the whispers starting, cousins exchanging glances, aunts stiffening in their seats. That's when I realized. This wasn't just a comment. This was her testing me, testing my family. And I had no idea how far she was willing to go, and then she made another comment. A louder one. Direct. About the dish my mom had spent hours perfecting. The moment Claire's second comment hit, the room shifted. It wasn't subtle anymore. She leaned forward, tilting her head with that infuriatingly calm expression, and said, Honestly, I think this could use a little more flair, maybe a sprinkle of something fresh. Her voice was casual, but the implication was sharp. My mom's cooking wasn't good enough. I could feel the temperature in the room rise. My mother's eyes welled up, and she quietly excused herself to the kitchen for a moment, as if she could disappear from the embarrassment. My dad cleared his throat, stiff and uncomfortable, while my relatives exchanged quick, awkward glances. Some tried to smile politely, pretending nothing had happened, while others whispered under their breath, clearly shocked. I sat frozen for a moment, caught between fury and disbelief. How could she say that, here, now, in front of everyone? I had defended her in my head for months, telling myself she just had a sharp sense of humor, a biting wit, nothing personal. But now it was personal, and it stung like a slap across the chest. I wanted to stand up, to grab her arm, to shout that this was unacceptable. But I stayed seated, my mind racing for a calm way to handle it. Claire, oblivious, or perhaps deliberately ignoring, the room's discomfort, continued to toy with the dishes in front of her. Every spoonful, every bite, was accompanied by a subtle smirk, an eye roll, a barely audible comment that made my stomach twist tighter. I could feel my face heating up, and for the first time, a sense of panic rose in me. This wasn't going to blow over quietly. I glanced at my cousins. They were looking at me, expecting some reaction. I could hear whispers from the aunts and uncles, tension crackling like static electricity. The cozy, celebratory vibe of the dinner was gone, replaced with this fragile, brittle energy, like a balloon about to pop. And just as I was about to speak, to finally address the insult directly, Claire leaned across the table and whispered something to my younger cousin. I didn't hear the words clearly, but I caught the look on their face, and I knew in that instant that this night was about to spiral completely out of control. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were tight around my fork, knuckles white, my chest pounding as Claire casually pushed her chair back and said, Honestly, I don't get the hype. This is just food. The words sliced through the room, sharp and deliberate. My mom's face went pale, eyes wide with shock and hurt, and the chatter of the room died down completely. Every pair of eyes turned toward me, silently asking, What are you going to do? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice, but the words came out hotter than intended. Claire, enough. My mom worked all day for this dinner. Show some respect. I could feel my heart racing, my palms sweating, every nerve on edge. She just tilted her head, that infuriating smirk still in place. "I'm just being honest," she said, voice smooth, deliberately dismissive. "Everyone's thinking it anyway." The room froze. My uncle cleared his throat awkwardly, and a few relatives tried to chuckle it off, but it was dead air. My dad looked furious, jaw tight, eyes darting between us, unsure how to intervene without making it worse. I wanted to grab her, shake her, make her understand that this was not a joke, but instead I stayed seated, anger and embarrassment coiling inside me like a spring ready to snap. Claire, seemingly enjoying the tension she created, continued to lean back and comment, each phrase a small dagger aimed at my mom. Really, I thought engagement dinners were supposed to be fancy. Not this. She paused, as if waiting for applause for her wit. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her napkin, fighting tears. I felt helpless in that moment, trapped between protecting my mom, keeping the peace, and confronting Claire. I could see the whispers spreading across the table, cousins exchanging shocked glances, aunts stiffening in their chairs. The warmth, the laughter, the sense of family celebration. It was all gone, replaced by this brittle, suffocating tension. And then, Claire made her worst comment yet, something about the dish my mom had spent hours perfecting. My stomach sank, and I realized that this night wasn't just ruined. It was about to explode. That's when it hit me. Claire wasn't just being insensitive. She was deliberate. I caught her glancing around the room with this quiet, calculating look, whispering something to my younger cousin. My cousin's eyes flicked nervously toward my mom, and suddenly it clicked. She was trying to manipulate the family, pit them against each other, and make me look weak. I felt my stomach drop. How could I have missed this before? All those little jabs, the smirks, the comments. This wasn't just arrogance or bad humor. She had a plan. And worse, she was testing me, seeing how far she could push before I broke. I could see it now. The tension, the shifting glances, the whispered words spreading like wildfire among my relatives. Both families were subtly at odds, unsure how to react, some taking her side, some desperately trying to hold on to neutrality. My dad's face was red with frustration. My mom was pale and quiet, clutching her napkin like a lifeline. And I felt that familiar surge of rage mixed with betrayal. I had always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, in trying to see the good in everyone, but now it was glaringly obvious. Claire's plan was to undermine my family's respect, my mom's pride, and ultimately me. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to make her see the damage she was causing. But I also knew that reacting without control would give her exactly what she wanted. My pulse was racing, heart hammering like a drum, the smell of the stew that should have felt comforting now choking me with tension. Every whispered comment, every glance, every smirk she cast seemed like a calculated arrow aimed directly at me. I took a shaky breath, trying to mask the storm inside. I glanced around the table and saw it. Two families now subtly divided, a room that should have been full of celebration feeling like a battlefield. The worst part? I realized the night was only going to get worse, and then, in the middle of this chaos, she did something that made my blood run cold. Something no one expected, not even me. Claire leaned forward, eyes glinting with mischief, and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Honestly, I'm surprised everyone loves this so much. I think it's overrated." Her words landed like a punch, and suddenly I felt every eye in the room on me. My mom's face went pale, her hands shaking slightly as she set down the dish she had spent hours preparing. The laughter and chatter that should have filled the room were gone, replaced with a tense silence that pressed down on us all. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Claire, that's enough!" I shouted, voice trembling, fury mixing with helplessness. "This is my mother's cooking, and it deserves respect." A few relatives gasped, while others leaned in, sensing the storm about to erupt. Claire just smiled that infuriating little smirk and said, "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Don't get so defensive." My jaw tightened so much it ached. The room seemed to spin. The clatter of cutlery, whispers, shifting chairs, the sharp scent of spices now mingling with tension. My mom stared at me, eyes wide, hurt radiating off her like heat. I wanted to hug her, protect her from this humiliation. But I also knew that if I let Claire get away with this, nothing would stop her. Then Claire tilted her head toward my cousin and whispered something, just enough for them to laugh softly under their breath. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just mocking food. She was actively sowing discord, turning family members against each other in subtle, insidious ways. I could feel my frustration bubbling, my heart racing, my chest tight. I tried to speak calmly again. "This isn't funny, Claire. You're crossing a line. Stop." She leaned back, raising an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the chaos she had created. Every glance she threw my mom's way, every tiny scoff, every whispered comment, cut deeper than words. And then she did something that I knew would make me lose control completely. Something calculated, cruel, and public. It happened faster than I could process. Claire lifted a fork, held a bite of my mom's prized dish in front of her, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I don't even know why you're proud of this. It tastes bland." Honestly, I expected more. The words landed like a hammer, and I swear the room went silent for a full heartbeat. My mom's shoulders slumped, and I could see her chest rising and falling as she tried to hold back tears. I felt a wave of helplessness crash over me. Everything I had believed about love, loyalty, and family honor was colliding into this single moment of humiliation. My dad's face was red with anger, jaw tight, eyes darting between us, unsure how to intervene without escalating things further. My relatives whispered quietly, some shocked, some awkwardly chuckling, but most just staring, frozen. The warmth of the evening, the laughter, the joy, it had evaporated. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to stand, to scream, to drag Claire out of the room and make her understand what she had done, but I felt paralyzed. My hands were shaking, my vision narrowing. Every sarcastic smirk, every whispered jab, every glance she threw my mom's way was like a dagger in my chest. I was powerless, and it felt like the whole world was watching me fail as a son, a future husband, and a protector. My mom quietly excused herself, heading to the kitchen, her pride crushed. I watched her go, feeling my own stomach twist. I realized in that moment that I had reached my lowest point, humiliated, enraged, and completely at the mercy of someone I had trusted. I felt my fiancée's cruel satisfaction radiating through the room, a storm I couldn't yet confront. I sank into my chair, heart hammering, mind racing. I knew something had to change, but at that exact moment, the weight of what was happening, the look of hurt on my mom's face, the divided stares of our families, it all pressed down on me, suffocating and unbearable. And then, I made a decision that would shock everyone in that room. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady the storm raging inside me. My mom was in the kitchen, quietly gathering herself, and I could see the silent disappointment in her eyes. It was a look that pierced deeper than any words Claire had said. I realized then that this wasn't just about the food, or the smug comments, or even the public humiliation. This was about respect, about boundaries, about protecting the people I loved from someone who had no regard for them. My heart pounded as I looked across the table at Claire. She was leaning back, arms crossed, clearly expecting me to fold, to apologize, to laugh it off. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to compromise my family's honor for anyone, not even for her. Not for love, not for tradition, not for appearances. I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced before, like the fog of fear and hesitation lifted all at once. I pushed my chair back and stood, voice firm, carrying every ounce of anger, hurt, and conviction. "Claire, this ends now," I said. The room went still again. Whispers faded. My dad straightened, sensing the tension, while my relatives leaned forward, anticipating what would happen next. My hands were still shaking, but my voice didn't waver. I cannot marry someone who disrespects my family, my mother, and me in front of everyone we care about. The engagement is over. Claire's smug smirk faltered, and I could see her confusion turning into shock. "What? No, she stammered, clearly unprepared for me to take such a stand. The silence was deafening. Two families now stared at each other, mouths slightly agape, tension crackling like static electricity. I could feel the weight of their anticipation, the judgment, the awe. I handed her the engagement ring, my hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "This doesn't belong with me," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "You've made your choice, and now we all see who you really are." As she sat frozen, her face pale, trying to grasp the moment, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. This was the night that everything changed. The night I chose loyalty and honor over convenience and illusion. And then, the room erupted in whispers, arguments, and gasps as everyone realized the magnitude of what had just happened. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then chaos erupted. Claire's eyes welled up with tears, but there was anger too, sharp and wild, lashing out at anyone who dared look at her. "You can't do this." She shouted, voice cracking, but I held up my hand. I wasn't going to let her hijack the moment. "I already did," I said firmly, meeting her gaze. "This is over." My mom stepped back into the room, wiping her tears, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes held something I hadn't seen all evening. Pride. She came to my side, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and the words steadied me like a lifeline in the storm. I could see the relief in her posture, the quiet validation that I had done the right thing. Claire stumbled back, looking at both our families, realizing that she had lost more than just the engagement. My relatives were divided, some shocked, some nodding silently, some whispering approvingly. The tension between our families, already frayed, now felt like a taut rope ready to snap. But at least the truth was out, and the walls of illusion she had built were crumbling. She tried to argue, tried to make excuses, but no one listened. I could hear the murmurs spreading, whispers of disbelief and judgment. Her plan to undermine us, to create chaos, had failed spectacularly. Instead, she had revealed herself, plain and raw, to everyone in the room. I looked at her one last time, calm now, heart racing but resolute. "I won't let someone like you disrespect my family. You wanted drama, you got clarity. Goodbye." I turned to my mother, who smiled through her tears, and for the first time that night, I felt a weight lift from my chest. And as Claire sat there crying and shocked, caught between two families now at odds because of her own actions, I realized the power of standing up for what's right, even when it hurts. The battle was over. But the lesson, the satisfaction, and the closure, that was mine. The room was a mess of murmurs, whispers, and stunned faces. Claire sat frozen, tears streaking her makeup, clutching the engagement ring like it was her last lifeline. Two families, once eager and celebratory, now sat divided, exchanging judgmental glances and quiet conversations. Some relatives quietly took my mom's side, shaking their heads at Claire's behavior. Others seemed unsure, caught between loyalty and the shock of the confrontation. The air was thick, heavy with embarrassment, tension, and relief all at once. I sank back into my chair next to my mom, who reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm okay," she whispered softly, though I knew it had taken every ounce of restraint for her not to break down completely. My chest tightened as I thought about how close we had come to a disaster that could have haunted all of us forever. I could still feel the heat of anger and adrenaline, but there was also a strange sense of calm. We had survived this storm. Together. Claire tried to speak, but every word seemed to falter, falling flat in the heavy silence of the room. She began, but my dad's sharp glance silenced her. She had nothing left to hold on to. The control she thought she had was gone. For a moment, I realized how cruel her plan had been. She wanted chaos, embarrassment, and division. But in trying to manipulate us, she had only exposed herself. Relatives slowly began to recover, some offering awkward apologies to my mom for the tension, others shaking their heads at Claire. I could feel the relief settling over our side of the table, a sense that integrity and loyalty had won the night. We had shown strength without stooping to her level, defending our family and standing up for what mattered. And as Claire finally gathered herself, mumbling incoherently and retreating from the room, I realized the magnitude of what had just happened. Not just the engagement being over, but the lesson in loyalty, respect, and boundaries had been delivered in the most dramatic, unforgettable way. But there was still one part left to this night. The reflection, the final closure, the moment that made all the pain and chaos worth it. The house finally began to calm, the tension slowly giving way to quiet conversations, nervous laughter, and the clinking of dishes being cleared. My mom sat beside me, eyes still glistening, but there was a lightness to her posture I hadn't seen since the night began. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her gratitude, her pride, and the unspoken thank you in her gaze said it all. For the first time that night, I felt the storm lift from my chest. I took a deep breath and reflected on everything that had happened. This engagement, the dinner, Claire's cruelty, it had all revealed truths I needed to face. Love isn't about compromise at the cost of your family's respect. Loyalty isn't optional. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is choose integrity over convenience, honor over desire. But standing up for what mattered, protecting the people who had given me everything, was worth every second of fear, every pang of heartbreak. I looked around at my relatives. The murmurs and whispers had shifted. Instead of judgment, there were smiles, nods, a quiet acknowledgement that the right choice had been made. Even those who had been unsure now seemed relieved, like a weight had been lifted. We had survived a night that could have torn us apart, and instead, we had grown stronger, bonded by respect and loyalty. As for Claire, she left the house that night crying, stunned and humiliated, trapped between the two families she had tried to manipulate. The lesson was clear. Cruelty and manipulation can never hide forever. Her actions, intended to create chaos, only revealed her true self to everyone. I sat back, savoring the silence, the sense of justice, and the knowledge that I had honored my family and my own values. The pain and embarrassment had been raw, the confrontation unforgettable, but the closure, it was pure, sweet, and empowering. I realized something essential. Protecting your loved ones and standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. And in that quiet, post-chaos moment, I felt peace. I felt power. I felt the undeniable relief of choosing loyalty over compromise and walking away with my head held high.